Amazing transformation. 5 ICE agents exposed and fired after detaining American-born pharmacist. Emily Torres stood behind the counter at Willow Creek Pharmacy, enveloped by the comforting scent of lavender and rosemary. Her fingers danced over prescription bottles, a familiar rhythm in her heart. But the air was thick with something else today, an unease that tightened around her chest. She had worked hard to be the dependable pharmacist in this small Texas town, her roots buried deep like the wildflowers blooming outside. Yet, with each sideways glance and dismissive whisper, the ground felt less solid beneath her feet. Today, that unease simmered, igniting doubts about her place and purpose as an American with Mexican heritage. When the door swung open, bringing in a wave of summer heat, 5 ICE agents stormed inside. They wore authoritative frowns, badges gleaming like swords ready for battle. Emily's breath hitched. Fear coursed through her veins, and the chaotic rhythm of her heart seemed to pulse louder than ever. They closed in around her, questions firing like arrows. Suddenly, the pharmacy, her sanctuary, was filled with whispers of accusations, her identity reduced to a target. She blinked against the growing pressure. The bright fluorescent lights felt too harsh, like the gaze of judgment. Was she merely a Mexican immigrant to them, despite her American upbringing? The knot in her stomach twisted tighter at the thought. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The agents continued to question her credentials, their distrust palpable, emotions colliding within her like a thunderstorm. Fear for her daughter Sophia crept in as she imagined the disbelief and anguish on her face. What if she lost her mother today? The community that once celebrated her accomplishments now held its breath, uncertainty etched on every face that peered in through the windows. She felt their doubts, index fingers pointed in thought, lips sewn shut by hesitation. Emily grappled with the reality that her hard-earned place in Willow Creek could never shield her from prejudice. Each dismissal, each murmured comment, felt like a shard of glass lodged deeper into her psyche. The precipice of chaos yawned open wide, and a shadow of isolation loomed over her. But just as despair threatened to drown her, an unexpected presence flickered through the haze. Mr. Davis, the retired pharmacist who once mentored her. His gentle gaze pierced through her turmoil, reminding her of her strength. "You can't let them define you," he whispered firmly. With his encouragement, she felt the flicker of resolve blossom within her. They pored over notes late into the evening, tracing back the incidents that led to this moment, uncovering the truth beneath layers of prejudice. Each revelation was a revelation, an awakening of collective anger and determination. As they prepared to confront the agents, tension crackled in the air. The eyes of the town bore witness to her fight. But something deeper lay hidden beneath the surface, a darkness more frightening than the agents themselves. Hidden secrets began to seep into the light, forming an intricate web that ensnared them all. Emily stood on the brink, her heart racing, courage wrestling against the cold grip of fear. She took a deep breath, knowing the moment had come. But would her act of bravery ignite the fire of change? Or would fear silence her once again? The tense atmosphere in the pharmacy felt like a suffocating blanket. Emily could hear the murmurs and sighs of those watching from outside, their faces a mix of concern, fear, and confusion. Each tick of the clock echoed her heartbeat, amplifying the sensation of time slipping through her fingers. She stood at a crossroads of fear and courage, ready to confront the unknown. Turning to Mr. Davis, she felt the grounding presence of her mentor, almost as if he were instilling a tiny ember of hope in her soul. "We have to stand together," he affirmed, drawing a line in the sand. It was a call to action, a reminder that despite the imminent confrontation, she was not alone. The truth was powerful, and it was time to wield it. The agents outside shifted their weight, intensity radiating from their gathered forms like a storm cloud ready to unleash rain. Emily inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of each breath anchored in her determination. This moment was bigger than her. It was about her daughter, her community, and her right to belong. The realization strengthened her resolve. "Let's go," she said, her voice steady yet fierce. They stepped toward the exit, the wooden door appearing both inviting and intimidating. Mr. Davis positioned himself beside her, a pillar of support against the encroaching shadows. Together they pushed through. As they exited, the sunlight hit Emily's face, the warmth contrasting with the chill that stalemate brought. She scanned the crowd. Familiar faces looked back, strangers and friends alike, unified in shared anxiety. But beneath that veneer, she sensed something else brewing, a collective desire for transparency and justice. The agents stood rigid, their eyes narrowing at her approach, faces twisted with unwarranted authority. Emily's pulse quickened as she faced them, feeling the onlookers' anticipation wrapping around her like a protective shroud. "I'm not just a pharmacist. I'm an American, and I've earned my place here. No one can take that away from me." The words surged forth, unexpected yet exhilarating, carving a voltage through the crowd. One of the agents, a grim visage split with doubt, retorted, "Your documents are questionable at best." That accusation set off a tremor in her chest, but she recognized the flicker of anger blooming within. "Questionable," she countered, her voice rising. "My life, my degree, my career, those are not questionable to me. This town and my service to it are testament enough of my legitimacy. I won't be silenced by unfounded fear." The gasps from the crowd resonated like ripples across a pond. Emily hadn't anticipated such raw emotion to erupt from her. This was her truth colliding with ignorance. But as she spoke, doubts gnawed at the edges of her confidence. What if this outburst only fueled their resolve? What if pride led to repercussions? She fought against it, locking eyes with Mr. Davis, who nodded, silently urging her to press on. "Your assumptions only highlight a fault in the system," she continued, "and it's time people like you are held accountable." Echoes of approval broke through the tension, a whisper of solidarity. As the ICE agent's facade began to falter, Emily sensed the walls around her begin to crack. Yet the confrontation was far from over. Behind the agents, the air shifted, a darker intent brewing beneath the surface of what appeared to be a simple confrontation. They were not just there to intimidate her. She felt they were being commanded by a deeper, more sinister force lurking in the backdrop. The urgency of the moment grabbed her attention, the stakes rising higher. Emily's heart raced. Not just for the moment, but for the implications this might hold for moments yet to come. She now understood that this was more than a fight for her identity. This was a battle for truth against a tide of oppression. As she prepared to dig deeper into the tangled web of accusations and prejudice, dark shadows loomed, threatening to upend her resolve. "Why are you really here?" she managed to ask, her tone both inquisitive and resolute. The flicker of hesitation from the agents hinted at a secret, yet to be revealed, one that could change everything. The moment was approaching. What lay beneath the surface promised to challenge not just her but everything she held dear. Emily's heart thundered in her chest, her pulse quickening as she registered the implications of her question hanging in the air. The agent's silence sharpened the tension, amplifying her sense of urgency. Uncertainty coursed through her, but it was now tempered by an iron will resolve to drain the darkness of opaqueness that shrouded their intention. "Speak up," she demanded, her voice unwavering despite the storm swirling in her mind. What could they possibly be hiding? The audience behind her stirred, their eyes darting between her and the agents, a palpable hunger for truth igniting their expressions. One of the agents shifted uncomfortably. "You don't need to know that," he replied, attempting to divert her forceful gaze. Yet the wavering tone belied the facade he desperately tried to maintain. Emily leaned in, narrowing her focus. The momentum of her voice, laden with conviction, pierced through the air like a sharpened blade. "I do need to know. Each of us deserves transparency, especially in the face of hostility. If I deserve to have my life scrutinized, Don't you think it's fair that you explain your actions too? She noted the tiny twitch at the corner of the agent's mouth, a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability cracking the hard shell of authority he donned. An opening. Let's start from the beginning. What brought you here today? She pressed, pulling from the depths of her professional training. The feeling of clinical observation, not just as a pharmacist, but as a fierce advocate, it surged within her, revitalizing the focus she once felt in the pharmacy. With each second, the crowd leaned in closer, forming an invisible barrier of energy that shielded her while amplifying the stakes. The tension felt like a tightly coiled spring begging to be released. One of the agents, his bravado unraveling, stepped forward, breaking the silence. "We're just doing our job," he replied defensively. "We've received reports." "Reports?" Emily interrupted, each word slicing through the air with icy clarity. "Reports based on assumptions and prejudice? Is that what justifies your actions? Buzzwords that perpetuate systematic fear?" Her words crackled with conviction, cutting through the defensive rhetoric they clung to. She sensed the agent's faltering, hesitation melting into a semblance of doubt. Beneath the bluster, did they fear the consequences of their own ignorance? The swirling thoughts in Emily's mind began stitching themselves into clarity. A revelation dawned on her that this confrontation was a chance not only to present her truth, but also to reveal the incompetence of those attempting to silence her. A stubborn determination unfurled within her. This wasn't simply a moral duty. It was also a professional mission to expose a fractured system that thrived on ignorance. "Tell me," she said, her tone shifting into a softer, more strategic approach laced with authority. "What do you want from me? If this is based on reports, then let's review them. Let's shed light on this so-called evidence that turns every individual into a mere statistic. Let's uncover what lies beneath." The air grew thick with anticipation as the onlookers sensed her transition from a heated confrontation to a cerebral unraveling of accusations. Emily found herself gaining clarity amidst the chaos. She was not merely fighting against a tide. She was crafting a narrative, weaving together her truth with the shared stories of those who had also faced similar predicaments. The agent hesitated, casting furtive glances toward his companions. "It's complicated," he admitted finally, the bravado dissipating like fog in the sunlight. It was a crack, a hint of fragility in the veneer of authority that had once felt impenetrable. Emily felt a surge of exhilaration. This was more than a test of who would win the confrontation. It was a turning point, an opportunity to harness the collective power of their truth. If she could unveil the depths of their intentions, perhaps she could unravel the very system that sought to dehumanize her. As a flicker of realization crossed the agent's face, she sensed they were on the precipice of something far larger than this singular encounter. This was a thread, fragile, yet promising, that could lead to untold revelations, ready to be pulled. "But what you don't understand," he began, voice wavering, "is that this isn't just about you anymore." With those words hung in the air, a chill ran down Emily's spine. The layers of the confrontation threatened to unearth more than she had bargained for. What was the hidden truth that was about to emerge? And how deep did this web of deceit stretch? Emily's breath hitched as she processed the agent's ominous words. A chill crept up her spine, and the adrenaline coursing through her veins shifted from fierce determination to a tight knot of dread. What did he mean? Her instincts screamed that they were teetering on the edge of something far more substantial than mere interrogations over misleading reports. "Not about me?" she challenged, her tone tinged with cautious defiance. "What do you mean? If this is about something greater, then I have every right to know. I deserve to understand exactly how my life, and the lives of countless others, are tangled in this. Unscrambling tangled webs often requires more than just courage. It demands clarity." The agent hesitated, a flicker of conflict shadowing his face. That momentary vulnerability emboldened her, coaxing her against the oppressive weight of the dire implications behind his words. "Listen," he said slowly, weighing each word as if they were precious gems. "You've become a focal point, a part of a larger investigation. We're looking for connections we haven't been able to uncover, not just about individuals like you, but about something embedded deeper within our system. Emily's mind raced, grappling with the precarious twist this conversation had taken. She had always envisioned her strength as a light shone upon the ignorance of preconceived notions, but now, it felt as though that light was reflecting back at her, illuminating her own apprehensions about a situation spiraling far beyond her immediate understanding. Investigating what? Who? Emily pressed, her voice steadying as she recognized the moment's significance. She could feel the trajectory of her career shifting, witness to an unseen junction that demanded her immediate attention. He looked away, tension radiating from his body as if he were battling the very secrets he was sworn to protect. You're part of an intricate puzzle, and revealing everything now could put you in danger, more than you realize. Emily swallowed hard, a mixture of fear and resolve entangling in her throat. The thought of danger could have easily paralyzed her. Yet buried within her conscious mind was the persistent echo of her duties as both a pharmacist and an advocate for truth. What kind of person would she be if she backed down now? Flashes of her training glimmered in her memory, those countless situations that had honed her skills into sharp, effective tools. The ability to listen, the capacity to discern lies from truth, the strength to stand defiant against overwhelming odds. Let's turn this into something constructive, she suggested, lowering her voice as she aimed for collaboration. If the connections you speak of are as large as you say they are, then wouldn't you want someone with insider knowledge to help? His eyes flared with surprise. The unexpected proposal hung in the air, mingling with the shifting dynamics of the crowd behind her, as they sensed the pivotal moment unfolding. If there was a way she could use this confrontation to her advantage, to leverage it into some semblance of control, she was willing to play the long game. I can guide you through my experiences, through the interconnectedness of what I know. But in return, I seek safeguards for myself and others who might be similarly implicated. No one should have to bear the burden of truth alone. She felt a quiver of conviction flowing through her as she extended the offer. In that instant, her fear transformed into a burgeoning sense of empowerment. The moment had arrived for her to reclaim her narrative, to step forward not merely as a victim of circumstance but as a proactive architect of change. The agent's brow furrowed as he processed her words, and for the first time, she could sense the swirling uncertainty reflected in his gaze. Why would you want to help us, he asked, suspicion lacing his words, masking an underlying curiosity. Because understanding does not dwell solely in accusation, she replied, her voice firm yet imbued with a sincere plea. I am ready to take this on, not just for myself but for those who face shadows of doubt and insecurity because of this systemic failure. As silence enveloped them again, the air thick with unspoken possibilities, she could tell the tide of the conversation had shifted in her favor. But Emily's instinct flared again. What exactly was she becoming a part of? What scale was this confrontation truly operating within? She had stepped into a vortex of implications without knowing the full extent, and with that lingering uncertainty, the door to a new dynamic was just beginning to creak open, the potential for deeper secrets waiting to spill out. What exactly is this investigation entailing, and how can we collaborate without putting ourselves in jeopardy? Before he could respond, her heart raced anew, depths of the unknown stretching before her, eager to pull her into the depths of discovery. Would she emerge with the truth, or be consumed by it? The agent paused, his jaw tightening as he weighed the implications of her proposition. Emily could see the conflict flicker across his face like lightning cutting through a stormy sky. He glanced around, vigilance emanating from every movement, aware that they were wrapped in a shroud of scrutiny. What you're suggesting isn't without its risks, he finally said, a warning laced within his words. If you decide to trust us, there may be no turning back. Emily's heart drummed heavily in her chest. The stakes felt monumental, and within her the potential for transformation swelled. She wasn't naive to the ramifications of her offer, yet it seemed to her that this was her moment to shift from defense to offense. If they were going to involve her in this tangled investigation, she wanted it to be on her terms, crafted through her insights and experiences. Then let's establish parameters, she said decisively, her voice steady. If we're going to pursue this, I need assurances, specifically protections. Not just for me, but for those who could be affected by our actions. We might uncover something larger, and the responsibility to safeguard those involved can't rest solely on my shoulders. His expression softened slightly, and Emily sensed the tiny fracture of agreement within him. Agreed. But getting you involved could complicate the investigation. It's not as simple as it sounds. Neither is standing idly by. Emily pushed back, a tremor of resolve coursing through her. Each word she spoke tightened the strings of determination within her. No longer was she merely a passive participant. She was becoming an agent of her own destiny. Fine, he conceded, a reluctant acceptance taking form. But you'll need to be discreet. I can arrange for some observational tasks. You'll essentially become our eyes and ears. The catch is, you must communicate only through secure channels. Deal, she replied, adrenaline shooting through her at the mention of action. Her mind began to race through the possible scenarios that lay ahead. Each step would be critical. This was no longer about merely advocating for truth. This was about survival against a greater force, a struggle that encompassed power dynamics she could only begin to understand. As they devised a tentative plan, Emily felt a surge of capability coursing through her. The training that once equipped her to handle pharmaceutical crises was now illuminating her path down a murky corridor fraught with challenges. She had the skills to decipher information and dissect the complicated layers of human interaction, all of which could now be applied to this unprecedented situation. Be careful whom you trust, the agent warned, his tone shifting from wary to urgent. People are not who they seem, and every interaction could have implications we haven't foreseen. His words echoed in her mind long after their conversation ended. Trust had always been something Emily approached with caution, yet the stakes had never felt as stark. Navigating this new landscape required a deft hand and a strategic mindset. The challenge ahead demanded she not only rely on her growing instincts but also to cultivate discernment. As days turned into frenetic nights filled with clandestine meetings, Emily breathed in the heady mix of fear and excitement. She was venturing into a world that often contradicted her moral compass, a realm rich with ambiguity. Conversations took on a new undertone. Whispers of connections seemed to pulse with hidden meanings. She was learning to read intentions layered beneath carefully constructed facades. Her observational skills sharpened, and they served as tools, redefining her identity not just as a pharmacist but as a vigilant participant in a much larger battle that had begun to take shape around her. But every inch forward stirred a lingering doubt. With each revelation came the overwhelming possibility of betrayal, the haunting thought that those around her, even the agent, might not share her commitment to uncovering the truth. What was to stop them from aligning against her? Would she learn to discern allies from foes, or would she find herself entangled in treachery so deep that her own principles would be challenged? The very atmosphere thickened with tension, and the uncertainty grew like a dark cloud as she prepared for her first task. She stood on the precipice of a challenge more significant than she had ever faced, and in that dizzying moment, she could not shake the feeling that her journey was only just beginning. Then, just as hope flickered in the shadows, a phone call fractured her thoughts, a name she hadn't heard, a warning that twisted inside her. "We need to talk, Emily. It's about the agency, and you might want to put your guard up." The urgency in the voice sent chills down her spine, and she knew the path ahead had just taken a perilous turn. The air in Emily's apartment buzzed with a charged silence after the call ended. She gripped the phone tightly, her knuckles whitened as adrenaline surged through her veins. "Put your guard up." The phrase lingered, wrapping itself around her mind. Who had been on the other end of that line? Each second stretched, the weight of uncertainty settling heavily on her shoulders. Her first task loomed ahead like a dark specter, taunting her. She understood that in this tangled web of intrigue, each step would demand an unyielding resolve. From being an observant pharmacist trying to navigate the ethics of a medical crisis, she was thrust into a world where perceptions blurred and truths twisted away from reality. Within herself, she felt a restless energy build. Relegated once to the background, she was now tasked with the active pursuit of deeper understanding. An investigator with no formal training, solving puzzles that endangered the fabric of not only her life, but potentially many others. Emily's phone buzzed again, the agent's number this time. A flutter of anxiety rippled through her, but she answered, forcing her voice to be steady. "What's going on? We need to meet. There's information that could affect your safety." His tone was flat, devoid of marker, straight to the point. "Where?" she asked, mind racing. Was he aware of her fears? Did he grasp the precariousness of her current position? Or was he merely a messenger delivering news that could seal her fate? Outside the old library, and Emily? He paused, letting the weight of her reality settle in. "Be careful. I can't stress that enough." As she dressed, her mind plunged into rehearsal. A black hoodie, familiar yet concealing. A clean pair of jogging pants. She practiced her cover story in front of the mirror, tracing the outline of her resolve even as doubt flickered just beneath the surface. The thought of betrayal gnawed at her, an insistent whisper taunting her confidence. As she stepped outside, the chill of the evening air hit her, but it didn't deter her determination. Each footfall resonated with a mixture of fear and empowerment. She had transcended from passive observer to proactive participant. Did this new role come with costs? Were there hidden traps awaiting her? The library loomed ahead, remnants of its former grandeur mingling with shadows. The agent stood near the entrance, scanning the environment. She didn't clock his body language until she was nearly a few feet away. The tension coiled around him was palpable, revealing layers of stress that mirrored her own. "Emily," he greeted, nodding slightly. "We don't have much time." The urgency in his eyes startled her. "What do you have for me?" He quickly scanned the surrounding area before leaning closer, his voice dropping. "There's a possibility that some operatives within the agency are not working in your favor. They've started to suspect someone is communicating outside the secure lines. This involves you." The ground below Emily shifted. Here was the shadow of betrayal that had haunted her thoughts. Her mind raced. What anchors had she formed with the trustworthy strands of this investigation? Did she count the agent among them? Or would his heart shift as the stakes grew higher? "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, scanning his face for any hidden motives. "Because you need to understand the dangers," he replied, his features faltering. "Your involvement is not a mere coincidence. Someone is feeding information to the enemy." Emily inhaled sharply, a thick knot tightening in her throat. This wasn't just a professional entanglement. This was a war of wits. A battlefield where she had to not only fight for her safety but also define her value in the shifting landscape of trust and motive. "Do you know who?" she pressed, urgency mounting within her veins. Each moment that passed without clarity felt like a slice through her resolve. "No, but I'm working on it. In the meantime, we need a plan. I suggest you prepare to tread carefully, observe closely, and above all, stay vigilant. Trust no one, not even those you think you're aligned with." His warning echoed in her mind, amplifying the urgency in her own heartbeat. As Thomas turned to face the library, she remained rooted at the threshold, conflict simmering within her. What did it mean to truly secure her role as a player in this shadowy game? Just then, two figures emerged from the periphery, their silhouettes cutting through the dark. An overwhelming instinct flared within her. Every fiber of her being shouted at her to run. The twilight moment morphed into something terrifying, and she felt it drape over her like a cloak of impending doom. "Emily," the agent whispered, urgency crackling in his tone. "We need to move. Now." The walls of reality began to cave in around her, and she understood that her journey had just taken a life-altering turn. Would she stand firm against the encroaching threats, or would she unravel beneath the weight of peril? Before she could consider her answer, the crowd shifted, and she felt their eyes lock onto her, a confrontation on the horizon. Emily's heart raced as she turned to face the two figures, their intentions obscured by the shadows that painted the dimly lit street. Every instinct honed from years as a pharmacist flared up. She knew the nuances of reading people, assessing situations, but this was different. There were no prescriptions to fill, no comforting consultations to offer. This was survival. "Who are they?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, laden with fright and urgency. "Just keep walking," Thomas urged, his hand resting on the small of her back, guiding her. The pressure grounded her, igniting a fire that began in her core. She pushed aside the instinct to falter, diving deeper into the role she had reluctantly embraced. They stepped into the shadows of the library, the weight of the building's history pressing down on them. It was a relic of a time when knowledge was the most potent weapon, yet here she stood, struggling to wield her newfound understanding against unknown adversaries. "What's our play?" she demanded, her voice steadier as she attempted to redirect the swirling chaos in her mind. She realized she needed to adopt Thomas's urgency, transform her rising fear into something more tactical. "Stay close, blend in, but pay attention," he instructed, scanning the environment like the strategist he was. "We need to find out what those operatives know. Information is our greatest ally right now." She nodded, embracing what felt like a drastic metamorphosis. Emily was no longer working behind a counter with her white coat and pharmacy cap. She was improvisational, a player in a high-stakes game. What could she learn? What unseen edges could she carve out? As they moved through the dim corridors of the library's rare book section, her mind unfurled its tendrils, grappling with unfamiliar capabilities springing forth. Layers of her former self peeled away, revealing clarity in purpose. "Being a pharmacist prepared you for this," Thomas said suddenly, as if reading her thoughts. "Think about it." "Think about what?" she shot back, a flash of defiance igniting in her tone. "Your knowledge of dosage, of measurement. Every detail matters here too. The ability to analyze, to observe. They're all skills that will serve you. You just need to apply them differently." His words sparked an epiphany. While she once had navigated the minutiae of medication interactions, she now had to dissect the nuances of human behavior, deceit, and loyalty. Recognizing allies and enemies would be critical, and time was thinning. "But what if I miscalculate?" she countered, self-doubt trying to rear its ugly head. "Then you adapt. Failure isn't the end, it's part of the process. Just watch closely. Listen. You have two powerful tools, your intuition and your drive." She expelled a slow breath, absorbing his confidence like a cool balm on her strained resolve. The shadows around her no longer felt suffocating, but rather an invitation to unveil the truth lurking in the folds of doubt. As they crept deeper into the heart of the library, a fleeting glimpse caught her eye. A figure at a table, riffling through documents hastily. She exchanged a glance with Thomas, the unspoken agreement striking a chord between them. "Let's get closer," he murmured. With her senses heightened, Emily transformed the library's silence into a blanket of cover, slipping behind the shelves as they maneuvered towards their target. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat. This was her moment. She wasn't just a pawn anymore. She was actively navigating the board. The figure's head lifted, sharp blue eyes scanning the room. Emily froze, instinctively pulling back, but a fierce determination urged her forward. She needed to see who was orchestrating this charade. A name escaped the figure's lips, one that made Emily's stomach drop. She knew it all too well. A primary whistleblower in the agency's internal dispute, a central player in the web that had ensnared her. "Do you know who that is?" she whispered to Thomas, dread pooling in her gut. "Yes, and that changes our next move." In that moment she felt the edges of her old life peeling away entirely. She had stepped into the unknown, and there was no turning back. And just as quickly, the reality crashed in. Every choice she made from this point would dictate not only her future, but possibly the fate of others tangled in the conspiracy. With this revelation shifting the landscape of possibility before her eyes, Emily couldn't shake the weight of conviction stirring within. The time had come to directly confront the shadows she had been entangled with for too long. Before they could formulate their next step, the library door creaked open and two agents entered, their expressionless faces sending a jolt of panic through Emily's veins. "Get ready," Thomas hissed, urgency rippling in his voice. Would they fight their way toward the truth, or would they be captured in the trap that had been set before them? The line between survival and betrayal was about to be tested in ways Emily had never imagined. Emily's mind raced, a flurry of thoughts colliding as she weighed their chances against the poised agents now filling the doorway. Everything in her screamed to retreat, yet instinct whispered for her to stand her ground and fight. She had entered this world of shadows unprepared, but now each second felt like a ticking clock pushing her toward a revelation. "What's the plan?" she muttered, her voice low but steady. Thomas's gaze darted toward the agents, then back to Emily. "We can't let them know we're onto them. Move behind those stacks and keep low." As they maneuvered through the maze of shelves, the weight of her task pressed heavily on Emily's shoulders. She was no longer merely a pharmacist. She was a fledgling operative caught in a game far larger than herself. The knowledge she had once applied to medications now spilled into strategies for survival. She reminded herself of how often she had anticipated drug interactions, understanding the delicate nature of one substance influencing another. Knowledge now transformed into a weapon for extracting information, for manipulating her surroundings. With trembling hands, she adjusted her stance, readying herself. As the agents approached the table where the figure had been working, Emily caught snippets of conversation. They were discussing a shipment, one that was crucial to the operations she had inadvertently stumbled upon. "Do you think she'll sell out?" one agent asked, voice laced with skepticism and annoyance. The other scoffed. "I wouldn't count on it. She's loyal to a fault. But we have the upper hand now." Emily's pulse quickened. Loyal to a fault. This woman, whoever she was, held significant influence, a key directly linked to the very conspiracy in motion. If she could figure out how to use this relation to her advantage, maybe Emily could turn the tide. "Stay close," Thomas urged, pulling her from her thoughts as they moved deeper into the library's embrace, shadows flickering as they passed rows of books. Silence wrapped around them like a cocoon, underscoring the pressing urgency of their mission. "We need to expose them," she whispered, the idea crystallizing. "If we can get close enough to gather intel on who they report to, we might bring the whole operation down." Thomas's brows furrowed. "It's a massive risk. If they catch us, it's over. We need to find a safe way to gather that information." "No risk, no reward," she shot back, emboldened by a fierceness she hadn't known she possessed. "I've spent years analyzing information in other fields. I can do this too. We need to move while we still can." The resolve in her voice stunned both her and Thomas, moments back filled with uncertainty. She had tapped into a well of purpose she never knew she possessed, a commitment to fight against the ambiguity that had ruled her world for months. The shadows were no longer just cloaking adversaries, they were allies she could manipulate, a cover beneath which she could thrive rather than hide. As they reached a dark corner of the library, Emily spotted a row of nearby computers, unused for most of the day, as few patrons roamed the depths of the rare book section. Connecting the dots, she gestured for Thomas to follow her. "Get on that one," she urged, pointing to the nearest terminal. "See if you can access any files related to those shipments." As he hurried to comply, she kept her eyes alert for the agents, feeling the tension in her muscles. The electricity of anticipation buzzed beneath her skin. Every second spent in the library brought her closer not only to the truth, but to her own sense of agency, to the understanding that she had power within her, power that had been stifled beneath the surface. "Found something," Thomas whispered, his fingers flying across the keyboard. Emily leaned in, peering at the screen. A database, names, dates, deliveries flickering before her eyes. This was the key. This was how they would pull the curtain back on the agents moving behind the scenes. But before they could dig deeper, a sudden sound broke through the silence. Footsteps. The agents were moving closer, and fear sparked through Emily. Every heartbeat echoed the realization that they had trespassed into dangerous territory, and now both their fates hung in the balance. "Quick," she urged. "Find a way to save this." Would they uncover the truth before being discovered? Or would their mission lead to an irreversible end? The weight of unresolved stakes hung palpably in the air, a clear line drawn between the potential for exposure and the threat of capture looming ever closer. Suddenly the game had become about far more than her own survival. The choices she made now held broader implications just waiting to unfold. Emily's heart raced as Thomas scrolled through the database, glancing nervously toward the approaching footsteps. The screen flickered with names that could unravel everything, names she needed to remember for what lay ahead. The adrenaline surged within her, intermingling fear and resolve into a potent mix that fueled her actions. She leaned closer. "Can you back it up?" she whispered fiercely, the urgency of the moment sharpening her focus. "I'm trying." Thomas's fingers danced across the keyboard, a mix of desperation and determination in his every keystroke. Each click felt like a cannon firing, echoing the rising stakes in Emily's mind. She couldn't afford to hesitate now. The footsteps were closer, a fearful rhythm that governed their movements. Emily's senses heightened. Everything felt amplified. The dim glow of the screen, the metallic scent of the library, and the heartbeat thrumming in her ears. This was not just a mission, it was her awakening. "Got it," Thomas hissed, looking up for the briefest moment, but Emily could see the strain etched on his face. "Great, let's go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. As Thomas thumbed through the files that had saved onto a USB drive, Emily felt a pang of anxiety. What would it mean to expose this operation? It dawned on her then that her choice could erode the loyalties she once thought inviolable. In her professional life, she had always been the compliant one, navigating the rigid pathways of pharmacy ethics with quiet devotion. But here, in this clandestine world, each choice could lead to uncharted territories of personal integrity. With a decisive nod, she gestured for him to rise. Just as they turned toward the stacks of books, the agents rounded the corner, their figures emerging like specters conjured from Emily's unrelenting fear. "Stop right there," one of them commanded, voice edged with authority. Instinct kicked in. With a quick breath, Emily grabbed Thomas by the arm and pulled him behind a wide bookshelf. They crouched low, hearts pounding in sync. Away from the light, they plunged further into darkness, a sanctuary from the looming threat. Her mind raced, plotting. "We need a distraction," she murmured, glancing back at the shallow aisle ahead. Desperate times called for audacious moves. "But," Thomas started, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "Trust me," she interrupted, unprecedented conviction resonating in her tone. "If I can create a diversion, you can slip through the back." Thomas hesitated, his loyalty battling against the risks. "What if—" "No what-ifs. Right now I need you to assume I've got this. I've done the calculations before, I can do them again, I'll cover you." Breathlessly, she formulated a plan, pulling the layers of her medical training into play. She had always been adept at calculating risks and benefits, an analytical strategist in a sterile environment. But now she needed to mold that skill into stealth and deception. The thrill of her abilities sharpened her focus as she breathed out, steadied by the noise of the agents who had moved further away. "On my signal," she instructed, giving Thomas time to mentally prepare. Time twisted, stretching like a taut string. Deep down she felt the duality of her life, the quiet pharmacist emerging juxtaposed with the daring operative she was becoming. They didn't know it yet, but darkness harbored her potential. "Now," she whispered fiercely, tossing a nearby loose book across the library floor. The agents turned, instinctively darting to the noise. Distracted, they ventured toward the sound, leaving the path ahead clear, the perfect moment for them to escape. "Go," Emily urged, and without looking back she sprinted toward the nearest exit, adrenaline coursing through her veins. But just as she rounded the corner, doubt clawed back. What would it mean to walk away with the information? Could she reconcile her past life with the burgeoning operative driving her forward? The questions gnawed at her mind, battling the rush of victory that surged through her. In that moment of flight, she realized the catalyst this journey was becoming, an arduous path toward the self she had yet to fully embrace. The defeat of the agents was not just about survival, It mirrored the defeat of her own fears. As they burst through the library doors, the sunlight struck them like a revelation. Emily paused, allowing herself a moment to breathe, before a chilling thought crept in. They weren't safe yet. The agents were still in pursuit, their net closing fast. Thomas grabbed her shoulder, displaying a mix of awe and fear. What now? The urgency of their mission loomed larger than ever, but within her glowed a new determination. The truth was closer, and with it, the desire to finally confront the choices that had led her here. The stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, and as the adrenaline ebbed away, the anticipation of what lay ahead filled her with an electric thrill. Now we go back, she stated, eyes alight with resolve. We dig deeper. We find out the truth behind these shipments, together. The path was fraught with danger, yet the rehearsal of her own instincts in that library had sparked a fire within her. This was not just a mission or a discovery. It was a metamorphosis. Little did they know, the next phase would unveil adversaries that tested her resolve like never before. But first they needed to be one step ahead because the web was tightening, and the agents would come hunting for them soon. Would she get to fully explore the skills she had barely begun to unveil? Or was the clock ticking toward an inevitable confrontation? Emily stood quietly in front of the vast glass windows of Willow Creek Pharmacy, gazing out at the sun setting low over the horizon. This was the place where all her challenges had unfolded, but it now felt different, illuminated by an extraordinary journey of growth and purpose. She had embraced her truth, and it had transformed her life. In the weeks that followed her confrontation with the ICE agents, Emily had taken powerful strides both personally and professionally. By taking a stand not only for her own dignity, but also for the wider community, she had become a symbol of resilience and determination. The investigations uncovered a network of corruption and fear that transcended her original understanding of their purpose. As an agent of change, she had learned to navigate the complexities of that world, her confidence swelling with each new discovery they made together. The first tangible result of their hard work materialized when Emily, once considered a victim, became a respected voice advocating for justice. The Attorney General's office recognized her revelations. They were instrumental in dismantling a significant portion of the predatory practices perpetrated within the agency. The gratitude of those affected fueled her determination. She was no longer silently sitting behind a counter. She was leading discussions on ethics and civil rights, shaping policies, and raising awareness. Amid the accolades, Emily found personal satisfaction in the everyday interactions that followed. The warmth of her returning customers enveloped her like a hug, their trust reaffirming her place within the community. Each time she helped vulnerable individuals navigate their health issues, she felt the profound value of her existence and her American identity, a fusion that held power in her hands. Her relationship with Sophia blossomed, her daughter thriving on seeing her mother embody the very courage she often spoke about. They shared evenings filled with laughter, intense conversations about social justice, and dreams for a future unmarred by the shadows of fear. Where worry once etched deep lines on Emily's brow, now joy radiated with an unwavering brightness. One Thursday evening, Emily stood before a packed chamber at the community center, preparing to speak at a forum addressing immigrant rights. She took a deep breath, gathering the energy in the room as the chatter faded into silence. There, among friends, family, and neighbors, she felt entirely at home. Her essence had shifted. "Fear immobilizes us," she began, her voice steady and clear. "But standing together can dismantle walls that try to keep us apart." As she spoke, her words flew unfettered, resonating with her journey. The audience responded. She saw heads nod in agreement, and a shared sense of purpose ignited the air. Moments later, an unexpected wave of applause surged through the audience, a thunderous acknowledgement of her courage. In that instant, she recognized that she was no longer just a pharmacist. She had achieved something greater, a unified voice of advocacy and acceptance. The culmination of Emily's journey through oppression and resistance had rippled outward, permanently altering the dialogue within her community. She had not only achieved recognition, but had woven her story into the fabric of American resilience. She stood with solid confidence, an established advocate for truth in a world that often tried to silence it. On her desk at the pharmacy, a framed letter from the state governor lay prominently displayed, a formal recognition of her advocacy efforts. Each time she looked at it, a wave of justified pride filled her. She had harnessed her experience, transforming it into tangible achievements that fortified her place in society. Though her mission was far from over, she felt empowered by each day's potential. The lingering specter of doubt that once shadowed her now served only as a reminder of her evolution. Emily had conquered fear, demonstrated resilience, and embraced her identity as an American born of immigrant roots with firm resolve. As she prepared to close the pharmacy for the night, Emily allowed a moment of stillness to wash over her, feeling immense gratitude for the journey that had led her to this point. She had not only survived, the wounds of her past had etched deeper layers of resolve and purpose across her spirit. Now's the moment for you to join Emily's journey and uncover your own. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping these narratives reach those who need them. Comment your reactions and theories about Emily's journey, as this connection strengthens our community. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for authentic stories of overcoming. Don't wait even one more second to share.